ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar and Banjul and 1 p.m. in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. First, our top stories. Senegal makes ECOWAS single currency and fight against terrorism priorities of its regional leadership. In Nigeria, outrage follows revelation of payment of nearly $6 million as ransom to kidnappers in under a year.
We are in a very, very dangerous situation as far as the issue of kidnapping, abduction is concerned.
The Gambia's Electoral Commission considers digital technology in election results management process.
And we're looking even at the possibility of digitalizing the process. We're trying to learn from our past mistakes, and I can assure you that this time around, it's not going to happen.
And Benin and the U.S. governments deepen military cooperation amid regional security concerns. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
On the news, this is a more edit.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We'll begin here in Senegal, where President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, current ECOWAS chairman, met on Thursday with General Birame Diop, who takes over as president of the ECOWAS Commission on September 1. At the presidential palace in Dakar, the two discussed Senegal's priorities for leading the regional bloc. They discussed advancing the ECO single currency, easing the free movement of people and goods, and strengthening ECOWAS' collective fight against terrorism. Francis Boniface completes the story.
General Diop's appointment for the 2026-2030 term was endorsed at the 69th ECOWAS Summit in Lungi, Sierra Leone, where President Bassirou Diomaye Faye was also elected to chair the bloc's conference of heads of state and government. Thursday's meeting was their first official engagement since taking charge of ECOWAS's two top governing bodies, allowing the Senegalese leaders to set out priorities for their respective mandates. On the table were improving the collection of community levies and operationalizing the proposed ECOWAS counter-terrorism brigade. The force is expected to comprise 5,000 personnel with an estimated annual budget of $2.6 billion. A major financial and logistical challenge for the bloc as it seeks to strengthen its collective security response. But the biggest political test could be rebuilding ties with the alliance of Sahel states, Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger following their withdrawal from ECOWAS. The Guinea-Bissau transitional process was also discussed, with Senegal designated to facilitate efforts to resolve the crisis. General Diop says the ECOWAS Commission will support Senegal's mediation in a pragmatic and effective manner. For the new leadership, strengthening regional security, deepening economic integration, and working to restore unity across West Africa remain the focus.
Francis Boniface filed that report staying in Senegal debate is growing as PASTEF calls for the next municipal council elections to be held on January 17, 2027, in accordance with the electoral calendar. The party, in a communique issued Wednesday, urged the Interior and Public Security Minister to kickstart the electoral process. The request was also sent to President Bassirou Diomaye Faye and the National Autonomous Electoral Commission, SENA. But is the party's call enough to trigger action, or could the courts ultimately be called upon to enforce the electoral calendar? Senegalese political analyst Mamadou Cho explains.
I think both were supposed to hear this call, first the justice, meaning the Supreme Court, because when we expect the presidency, the President Diomaye and his team to hear this call, maybe we'll wait for a long time because he is in a political battle against his former ally Ousmane Sonko. And he has funded a new political party which is very, very young, and for 5 months heading to polls elections for mayors and departmental council is dangerous for him. That's why we can understand maybe the behavior of the president to take a bit of time over next year, by the end of next year, try to gain months, thinking that with time he can get his party stronger and maybe ready to face the PASTEF opposition. There are many, many stakes for him in this election if he loses or if he wins.
Senegalese political analyst Mamadou Cho speaking there. We head now to neighboring the Gambia, where the country's Independent Electoral Commission is exploring digital solutions to speed up results processing ahead of the December 5 presidential election. IEC Vice Chairman Cherno Jallo speaking to Askanwi Media says modernizing the process could reduce the uncertainty, tension and speculation after triggered by prolonged delays in announcing results. The Commission says the aim is to deliver results faster and more transparently while maintaining the safeguards needed to protect the credibility of the vote. Rosamara Cates in Banjul reports.
As preparations intensify for the 2026 presidential election, the Independent Electoral Commission says it is exploring how technology can improve the management and delivery of election results. The declaration of results remains a closely watched stage of the election, while delay often creates uncertainty and fueling suspicion amongst voters and political parties. Speaking at Askanwi Media, IEC Vice Chairperson Cherno Jallo says the Commission is exploring the digitalization of part of the result management.
So we are aware of the issues that are being raised regarding delays in the announcement of results. We could also pave the way for speculation, assumptions that the IEC is cooking the results and all that stuff. And we don't want that to happen. We're trying to learn from our past mistakes, and I can assure you that this time around, it's not going to happen.
But technology alone may not be enough. Its success will also depend on the public trust and whether Gambians are convinced that a digital system can deliver results more quickly without sacrificing accuracy and accountability. Some Gambians share their views.
Let them use the traditional method, and then come the upper election, they can work on that maybe within 5 years, and they will put their house in order.
Digital tools will support, not replace the manual system, but questions remain on electricity, internet, and public trust in rural areas.
And given here against the election period, with the slow pace with which they work, I don't think they will be able to do it. And even if they do it, it will be fine, but I doubt if they will be doing it.
The IEC says any digital system adopted must be secure, accessible, and trusted by all stakeholders, while retaining mechanism to verify and authenticate the results. For WADR, Rose Samara Cates, Banjul.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Crossing over to Nigeria, where a new report by a geopolitical research firm points to a growing scale of kidnapping, particularly in the northern region of the country. Beyond the security implications, SBM Intelligence says nearly $6 million was paid as ransom to kidnappers and armed groups in the last 11 months. But adding his voice to the revelation, security expert Edinem Musoro believes the stated amount may represent only a fraction of the true total. WDR's Usman Omar in Abuja reports.
The scale of kidnapping in Nigeria appears to be far greater than official and independent figures may capture, says SBM Intelligence, a geopolitical research and security analysis firm. The report by SBM says ransom payments tripled from the previous year, while 7,825 people were abducted, a 66% increase. But security expert Edinem Usoro says the true scale could be considerably higher given the difficulty of tracking kidnappings and ransom payments across the country.
The kidnapping business in Nigeria, they don't route it through any banking sector. So when you hear people bandy figures, it may be more than what they're talking about. Maybe the issue is that how did they get the figures? The big figure they are banding, including government, we are in a very, very dangerous situation as far as the issue of kidnapping, abduction is concerned.
The report says mass abductions now dominate Nigeria's kidnapping landscape, with 4 out of every 5 victims taken in groups. Northern Nigeria accounted for more than 93% of reported cases, with Zamfara and Sokoto in the northwest recording the highest number of mass kidnappings. SBM identifies Jama'atul Ahl Sunnah Lid-Da'awati wal Jihad, the historic Boko Haram faction, as the biggest reported beneficiary of ransom payments, collecting about 90% of the money from just 8 abductions. Among the largest payments, nearly $4 million was reportedly paid for the release of 416 people abducted in Ngoshe, Borno State, while another $1.5 million was allegedly paid for 315 students and staff abducted from St. Mary's School in Papiri, Niger State. The report also records at least 6 cases where hostages were killed despite ransom payment. However, SBM does not establish whether federal, state or local authorities have directly paid or rewarded armed groups to secure the release of hostages. Security expert Edinom Usoro says the findings should therefore be seen as a snapshot of Nigeria's growing kidnapping economy, not its complete picture. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Still on security-related matters, Benin is seeking to deepen its military and security ties with the United States as Chief of Defense Staff General Fracture Gbagudi holds high-level talks in Washington on regional security. Gbagudi met with General Christopher Mahone, Vice Chairman of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, as Cotonou looks to strengthen defense cooperation with Washington amid growing security threats in the region. Sanklo Janko reports.
The two military officials discussed areas in which Benin and United States can strengthen their security cooperation. Cotonou wants Washington to continue its assistance through the United States Africa Command, AFRICOM. However, no new agreement on the deployment of U.S. troops to Benin or on any additional operational arrangement was announced. The United States supports the Beninese armed forces through training, equipment, and efforts to strengthen their operational capabilities. In August 2024, the United States provided Benin with protective equipment for soldiers involved in security operations. The strengthening of the Benin-U.S. partnership comes amid the expansion of Sahel-based armed groups towards the coastal countries of the Gulf of Guinea. Benin, particularly vulnerable in its northern region, is continuing to strengthen its military capabilities. The country is also cooperating with its neighbors, Niger and Burkina Faso, which have been engaged in the fight against terrorism for more than a decade.
A report from our Cotonou correspondent Aziz Adam Sule and voiced by Sankule Janko. In Ghana, a growing gambling culture among young adults is raising concern over its potential impact on their finances, education and mental well-being. A 2025 study by the Gaming Commission of Ghana found that 46% of young adults, especially tertiary students, use part of their stipends to gamble, particularly on sports betting. The Commission describes this trend as alarming, prompting calls for stronger interventions to prevent gambling addiction and its social and economic consequences. There is more in the following report by Eliklim Awuku.
For many young people, sports betting has become easily accessible, with mobile phones and betting platforms making it possible to gamble almost anywhere. But health experts warn that excessive gambling can have serious consequences, including poor academic performance, sleep problems, social isolation, anxiety, and depression. In some cases, gambling addiction can also lead to financial difficulties, borrowing, and even theft. Only recently, a bank relationship manager was found to have diverted $1 million from a client's account, with $53,000 allegedly spent on sports betting. It is against this backdrop that activists are raising awareness about gambling addiction and its harmful effects. Youth activist Kushtain Aburov Mustafa says the situation requires urgent intervention.
When you look at the causes, first, the desire want to be wealthier earlier, the miseducation and how wealth is created, I think is one of the causes. As they always say, unemployment is one of the causes to the gambling. But I think with good community involvement and good strategy, we can totally eradicate gambling.
Others are calling for a more coordinated approach to preventing and treating gambling addiction.
It is most of them are now involved in gambling. They spend most of their time in it. And sometimes all the money that they have, they lose it. Someone who can be, maybe previously is a very decent fellow, can fall victim to these gamblings. And the moment he falls victim to it, he becomes addicted.
Stakeholders say sustained public education, stronger support systems, and improved economic opportunities for the youth will be critical in tackling gambling addiction and its growing impact. For WADR, Elikuli Mauku, Accra.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM in Dakar and online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegal makes ECOWAS single currency and fight against terrorism priorities of its regional leadership. In Nigeria, outrage follows revelation of payment of nearly $6 million as ransom to kidnappers in under a year. The Gambia's Electoral Commission considers digital technology in election results management process. Benin and U.S. governments deepen military cooperation amid regional security concerns. And still ahead, we do have the guest interview and some sports stories. Please stay with us.
Bringing you the facts beyond the headlines from Monrovia, Liberia. This is Abraham Parker. Stay tuned to WADR 94.9 FM Dakar.
And we're also streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. As Liberia prepares to assume the rotating presidency of the United Nations Security Council in December 2026, it has already outlined key priority areas. These are essentially youth and women empowerment as well as peace and security. Officials say Liberia will use a series of events in New York beginning this September to showcase its experience in peace building and advance the country's vision for women and young people. Our Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
Among the priorities Liberia plans to elevate its women's participation in peace and security. Gender Minister Bermin Horace Colley says Liberia will host a high-level event on the theme From Pioneers to Global Leaders, highlighting the historic role of Liberian women in ending the country's civil conflicts.
And we chose the theme because Liberia has had a journey in women, peace and security. We stand as a global pioneer for women, peace, and security, agenda across the world. We are an example to the world.
Youth, peace, and security will also feature permanently in Liberia's international advocacy. Youth and Sports Minister Colleen Okora says the country will host a separate high-level event to promote greater youth participation in peace building and international development.
We expect to have between 75 to 100 participants who will come from members of various governments, United Nations agencies, international foundations, civil societies, and members of the Liberian diaspora.
The government says the goal is to move beyond the dialogue and conferences by creating concrete opportunities for young Liberians to play a meaningful role in peace building and international development. For Liberia, the September events could offer an added test of its diplomatic priorities and influence ahead of its assumption of the UN Security Council presidency in December. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, this afternoon we continue the conversation on the growing debate over PASEF's call for the next municipal council elections to be held on January 17, 2027, in accordance with the electoral calendar. The party is urging the Interior and Public Security Minister to kickstart the electoral process, while a request was also sent to President Bashir Jamai and the National Autonomous Electoral Commission Sena. But is the party's call enough to trigger action, or could the courts ultimately be called upon to enforce the electoral calendar? In this guest interview, Senegalese political analyst Mamadou Cho provides some clarity to this.
The camp which is likely to come out winning this election in taking the time is the executive by President Bashir Jamai. So he want to make sure, because he made it clear that for the time being with his new party, he has on his side 300 mayors out of 558. We don't know if we go back to the polls in January or any months next year, if he will stand with this 300 election, because the game is in that. Or he has to win no matter what happened this election for the rest of his term, because if he loses, it means we are in a situation of what we call a lame duck president, meaning that for the rest of his term, he should even resign instead of, keeping on for the presidency.
That's because he will have no political base or stand and no support for his policies and agenda from the federal to the local level.
That's it. Because it is very important at the local level to have some mayors, the majority of the mayors, But the most important for him, and we are waiting for him to dissolve by December, the National Assembly, which means that maybe by any months next year, we'll co-organize both local and parliamentary election, because he's in a gamble and trying to win both elections. If he succeeds in doing that, it will be very good for him heading to 2029 for getting a second term. In case he loses, maybe the best piece of advice we can give to him is to even resign from the presidency.
And you've said severally that this really present some sort of risks for the country. Tell us, are there chances that these elections could be postponed? And if that happens, what do you fear the most?
No, the way we are moving on, I mean, these elections are likely to be postponed, because look at the decision released by the Supreme Court today. There's an organization from the civil society who went there to oblige the Supreme Court to tell the president to set the date for the election. But they lose this, which means that they are giving ammunition for the president to postpone this election. And we are 5 months from the schedule when this election was supposed to be organized. So no matter how costly the local election can be, the best situation we can move on is to know between Pastef of the Speaker of the House, Ousmane Sonko, and Kirai of the President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who is truly the strongest party. We need to go to election to know that, because we cannot continue, in the situation we are facing right now. Both parties are saying, I'm stronger than the other one. So we need to give the voice to voters, and then if this election and the results coming on give to the Kirai or the Pastef the victory, so we can move forward. But we cannot, continue as the situation is right now.
Mamadou Cho, what do you think, in your opinion, will provide a lasting solution to this political stalemate? Because either ways, whether it's Pastef that wins the majority or Kira that wins the majority, this face-off will continue.
In fact, the quicker this election can be organized, the better it is for our country. Because as you know, I think that the justice system is key in trying to find a solution forward. If you remember, heading to the presidential election in 2024, in 2023, the National Election Board obliged President Macky Sall to let Ousmane Sonko, go forward for his candidacy for the presidency. But at the last minute, the Constitutional Council decided the contrary. But if we remain with this Constitutional Council, we saw how they behave against Macky Sall's willingness to postpone the election. So trying to capitalize with this victory of democracy, I think it is up to the Supreme Court to maybe tell the president that Senegal is a democracy, and in a democracy, it is really commonplace to know even 10 years before on which day people are supposed to go to polls.
That was Senegalese political analyst Mamadou Cho there. In sport news, the president of the Nigeria Football Federation, Ibrahim Gusau, has announced his resignation from office. He made the announcement during the press conference at the NFF Glass House in Abuja. Addressing the press, Gusau said he decided to step aside to give other Nigerians the opportunity to contribute to the development of football in the country. He maintained that despite the failure of the Federation's men and women's teams to qualify for the World Cups, he was leaving the NFF in a better position than he found it. Gusau also disclosed that he had advised members of his board to resign, but said he was not aware of any board member who had so far stepped down. Gusau's resignation comes amid growing criticism of football administration in Nigeria following recent setbacks suffered by the country's national teams, particularly the Super Eagles and Super Falcons, who both failed to qualify for the World Cup. Over to women's football, as last year's runners-up Zesco Ndola girls will face two-time African champions Mamelodi Sundowns in the final of the CAF Women's Champions League COSAFA qualifier Botswana 2026 on Saturday after both came through tough semi-final clashes. Zambia's Zesco edged Malawi's Silver Strikers 2-1 in the first of Thursday's semi-finals before Sundowns saw off defending champions Gaborone United with a comprehensive 5-0 win. The decider will kick off at 1800 CAT or 1600 GMT, with the winner booking their place at the Continental Finals later in the year. Silver Strikers and Gaborone United meet in the third playoff at 1500 hours or 1300 hours GMT as the battle for bronze. In the meantime, Barcelona's new player Rodri, a €60 million, about $70 million arrival from Manchester City this summer, was introduced in the second half at Spotify Camp Nou, with the home crowd giving him a rousing reception as he entered the pitch. Rodri missed Sunday's 5-0 win over Elche due to a lack of match rhythm, but started training with his new teammates on Monday and was named on the bench against Athletics. There was also a first start for England international Anthony Gordon, who created 2 goals off the bench against Elche last Sunday, and his name was chanted by Barca fans when he was taken off in the first half. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Umudag Nogo for the technical support. Let's keep the conversation coming on all of our social media platforms, X, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. Well, coming up at the bottom of the hour is WADR Specials. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.